Hello, everybody. Hello, ladies, gentlemen, everyone who's watching. Today, we are going to be chatting about how to boost metabolism and blast belly fat after 45. Now, the reason why I wanted to delve into this topic is that there is so much misunderstanding and misinformation about metabolism and belly fat and how to really actually boost your metabolism in a way that's actually very practical and relatively easy. There's a lot of complications surrounding this topic, so I want to make it as simple as possible for you in this short live class today. So the first thing that I want to focus on is I want to focus on metabolism, and I want to myth bust a little bit about metabolism, because I hear a lot of women saying to me, my metabolism has ground to a halt. It has stopped. It's almost like it's sort of broken. I've messed it up. There's something dramatically wrong. Or I hear a lot of women saying, oh, I guess it's my metabolism, which is why suddenly I'm gaining weight, particularly around the midsection, and I'm unable, to lose it. And I think a real pain point for so many women that I speak to, particularly women after menopause, but honestly, it can start as early as perimenopause, is an expanding midsection, sometimes known as middle-age spread, lovely, and sometimes just known as there's so many awful terms for it. It's sort of belly fat, muffin top. I'm sure you've got some terms as well that you use, but either way, it's not pleasant. And if that's something that you're struggling with, and you're over the age of 45, there's a reason why, and I'm going to get into that in a moment. But what I really want to sort of guard against, and the first thing that I want to deal with in this class today, is to have you really understand that don't think that just because either you've been yo-yo dieting for years, that your metabolism can never be recovered. That's it, that your metabolism has ground to a halt, because that's a myth and it's just absolutely not true. You can actually boost your metabolism. And I'm going to go through 7 tips today of how you can actually boost your metabolism. And I actually sort of put these two things together because I think they're obviously very closely related, is your metabolism and your belly fat. Okay, so that's what we're going to get into. And feel free to, leave some comments, but I just want to go through this without too much interruption because I want to get to all the pieces here. Now, your metabolism can change and will change for the most part after the age of 45. And certainly when you go into menopause, your metabolism is going to change. Now, menopause is generally, the average age of menopause is about 51. Some of you, it'll be a little earlier. Some of you, it'll be a little bit later. And some of you will have gone into early menopause because maybe you've had a hysterectomy or a partial hysterectomy. But anyway, so that's when, when things tend to change. And I certainly noticed for myself that when I went into perimenopause, which is when I started experiencing changes in my body, in my mood, in my cycles, everything went a little bit wacky. That's when I realized that, things were going to change unless I did something about it. And so I did do something about it. And being a nutritionist and being in the wellness space for a long time, I'm like, okay, we're really doing something about it. And really, that's now what I educate women on. And I help women in a very detailed way to really dial in all these pieces for them, because it is complex, all the different lifestyle pieces that feed into not just boosting your metabolism, but to reduce, belly fat, inches off your waist. And the beautiful news is that, which is very unusual, because obviously most diets and weight loss diets have a 95 to 98% failure rate, whatever you try and do, whatever kind of weight loss diet you do over time. And so what is so gratifying for me to see is that my clients, and some of you might be on today, and clients that have been working with me for, 1 year later, 2 years later, and this is really quite extraordinary. It's in some ways it's almost unheard of, but these beautiful clients, they not only maintain their weight release after they've had their initial weight loss, they maintain it, and they melt or shave or reduce inches off their waistlines, and in some cases a significant amount of inches, but it stays. It is a long-term solution. And so that's what we do. So it's really exciting. And that's to tell you not to give up, that there is hope. And whatever anybody says to you, because I think a lot of people around you go, oh, it's just the way it is. Your doctors, your friends, it's just, I guess it's, middle-age spread, or that's what happens. And I bet that you look at people around you who are maybe older than you, or, further down the road than you, and you make, oh, I guess that's just a thing. But it really does not have to be a thing. Now, does it take a lot of understanding, work, application to really dial all the pieces in? 100%. And if anybody thinks it doesn't, they're gravely mistaken. So the quick fixes that we hear about, and there are so many on the internet, aren't they? There's the quick fixes. You only have to go to YouTube. Some of you are watching on YouTube today to see blast belly fat burn, belly fat, blah, 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 because it's such a sort of obviously searched term, belly fat. But it makes my head spin off its axis to see all this misinformation with no credible science behind it, and oftentimes information that can be actually really deleterious to your health and can do the opposite in the long run. And that would be very much the sort of ketogenic approach, eating, a lot of saturated fat and all of that kind of thing. Not a good plan for boosting your metabolism over time, because that's what you want. You want to boost it and then maintain it, right? And to actually reduce belly fat. Okay, so that's one, but there are many, many others, and you're going to hear it all. Oh, drink tons of apple cider vinegar, take these gummies, have these pills, or it's just endless, all this nonsense. And then there's devices, right? Like metabolism testing devices with apps and all this sort of new technology. And honestly, the problem with that is that it's what I call busy work. It's like, when you're trying to get a project done. We've probably all been there, and you're like, oh, well, I've got to, check my emails, or do this or do that. And you do everything but the actual project that you need to be doing. And honestly, it's the same with weight loss and fitness and health. Sometimes we can get sidetracked by all these sort of distractions, like the device that does this and the device that does that and the app. In many ways, I think apps are absolute distractions. right? It's just busy work. Okay, so you can test your metabolism, check it out, whatever. But it's just a kind of, in some ways, it's a form of navel gazing. It's just like, okay, so we're doing that, and you think you're getting somewhere or learning something or doing something, but you're not, because you're not doing the heavy lifting. So really beware of all these kind of quick metabolism fixes or gadgets to boost your metabolism or to blast belly fat, because most of the time they're going to sell you, you're going to come up empty-handed. So it's a waste of your time and it's a waste of your money. And as I said, with so many of these things, it just gives you kind of false hope, right? Oh, maybe I'll do this thing. I'll pay $200-300 for this device and hope that, you know, and then I've spoken to so many women who've tried something like that. A year later, that device is gathering dust. It seemed maybe not that expensive. Like, okay, well, if that's going to change my metabolism, but a lot of these things end up being very expensive if you just keep on using them, doing them and buying them. Not a good idea. Supplements is another really big one that you really want to be aware of. Really beware, with big red flags all around you, is metabolism boosting or belly blasting supplements. Really, to this day, I've never known any of those that works long term. It's just a quick, it's not even a fix. I was going to say it's a quick fix. It's not even a fix. It's just a quick, you know, load of nonsense. So, as you know, those of you who follow me, I just call it tight. So let's get into this. So there are 3 reasons why your metabolism can slow down a little bit after the age of 45, and why you start gaining belly fat. So number 1 is reduced estrogen levels. So obviously, when you go into perimenopause, your hormones are going a little bit wacky and they're going all over the place. And then when you get into menopause, then you are obviously going to have reduced estrogen levels. And there's reduced all the different hormone levels and raised cortisol levels. So that's the unfortunate piece, is that we're losing the hormones that used to keep us, you know, fit and strong and have a certain body composition. Those are diminishing. And the hormone that we don't want to go bananas and we don't want elevated levels is cortisol, because cortisol is a stress hormone. And this particular stress hormone and the release of it actually leads directly to belly fat. So that's exactly what we don't want. So these fluctuating hormones can be an issue. And so that's really what I work on very, very closely with my clients, is we have to address all these different pieces. It's not just one big sort of quick fix. We need to look at all these different things. Now, so that's one reason. Now, when your hormones change, and particularly when estrogen diminishes, your body composition changes as a woman. And so where you used to maybe gain, you know, fat or weight would be maybe more evenly distributed, maybe a little bit more in your hips or your thighs or your legs or even your arms. It is going to be more concentrated in the midsection. And that is why we get belly fat as we get older. And that is just a thing that happens. And that's very much hormone related. Now, is the answer just to take hormone therapy? No, not necessarily. Now, some women do, some women don't. I'm not going to speak about that today. But regardless of whether you take HRT, hormone replacement therapy, or not, you still need to make some significant lifestyle changes if you want to reduce your belly fat and inches off your waist. There is no getting around this. You're going to hear me say this over and over again because I just tell the truth, right? There's no easy, quick fix, easy thing to do. It takes work, it takes commitment, and it takes really understanding how to put all the different pieces together. And that is exactly why, you know, I work with my clients to bring all these different strands together. Hypothyroidism, yes. So I've just had a question come in, which is, can hypothyroidism? And that's a really good question. And that's one of the little pieces that I was going to come to. So we'll just get to that right away. So hypothyroidism is basically, hypo means low. So you could call it a low firing thyroid. And some women might even have Hashimoto's disease. And I'm hearing more and more a lot of thyroid dysfunction. It could be hyper, it could be Graves, it could be Hashimoto's, thyroid cancer. A lot of women that I work with have thyroid issues. Maybe they don't even have a thyroid. So yes, obviously, your thyroid affects your ability to lose weight, and it's really, not so much directly connected to belly fat per se, but 100% metabolism. Now, I will say that it's epidemic, low thyroid. The women that I work with, I would say 80% of women that I work with, 80% of my clients have low thyroid. They've been put on thyroid medications, they've been on them for years, or there's some kind of thyroid issue. And there's many reasons for this. It's stress, which is a really big factor. It's the lack of nutrients, micronutrients in our food, in our soil. It's environmental toxins. There's a lot of reasons why it's almost becoming the rarity for women not to have thyroid issues, particularly after the age of 45. Now, the good news is that having thyroid issues, having hypothyroidism, or even Hashimoto's, does not mean that you're lost, that you can't release unwanted pounds, and that you can't release your belly fat. Absolutely not. But again, you've got to know how to do it, and you've got to have all the pieces come together. Okay, so that's another reason. Another reason is loss of muscle mass. So as we get older, and particularly after the age of 50, we start significantly losing muscle mass, lean muscle mass. And even the muscle that we have, the muscle mass that we have, it changes in its composition. So it gets more, you get more fat in your muscle, fatty streaks, or your muscle gets streaked with fat. I know, lovely. So your muscle changes, but your muscle mass, you're going to start losing that. It's called sarcopenia, and it's very serious. It's not to be taken lightly, because yes, it directly affects your metabolism not to have good lean muscle mass, to maintain it and even increase it, to be honest with you, which is what I have my clients do. Certainly after menopause, you really got to watch that. So it can affect that, but also the other far-reaching effects of sarcopenia are, and I talked about this a little bit in my last live, are not to be ignored. And I'll do a whole nother live on that, because that's a sort of separate piece. And then the final piece of how your metabolism can change is caloric restriction. So a lot of women that I speak to have done caloric restriction diets. So they've done, oh gosh, I've heard it all, but really, quite significantly decreasing caloric intake. And now there's a lot of controversy and a lot, well, I should say even more, a lot of very, very, very complex science about adaptation, meaning that if you reduce calories, does your metabolism slow down and adapt to cope with this caloric deficit that it's experiencing, or can it level out? So I'm not going to get into that. It's way too much science for the purposes of today, but I will say it is not a good idea for any woman over the age of 45 to do any kind of severe caloric restriction. It is pretty much the worst thing you can do for so many reasons. More than anything, it just leads to stress, because going around being hungry all the time and stressed, that raises your cortisol levels, and then you're not in it's the sort of knock-on effect. So is really understanding that everything that we do, our whole lifestyle, it's holistic. Can you see that? How I'll say this so often that it's just never one thing. Oh, I'm just going to do this one thing or not do this one thing, and that will change everything. I wish it were the case, but it's like really anything in life, isn't it? It's multifactorial. It's putting all those pieces together. And certainly as far as boosting your metabolism and releasing belly fat, it is all these different pieces. There's a lot of different pieces that come into play. And I'm going to cover just very briefly, very high level, 7 of these pieces right now. And, to get into more detail, is to get into more detail. You have to come work with me if you want to have more nuance and more detail about all of this. So number 1 is intermittent fasting. So let's talk about intermittent fasting. Now, intermittent fasting can be really useful, can be a really, really useful tool. Certainly it's something that I advocate for the clients that I work with. And there's also fasting. So there's sort of 2 different things. There's intermittent fasting, which is your eating window, obviously during the day, and how long or how short that is. And there's also short fasting, short periods of actual fasting, like a 24-hour water fast. I think both are really beneficial, but they have to be done correctly. And there's such a caveat with intermittent fasting, because intermittent fasting can be done wrong. It can be done so that it can actually have deleterious effects because your eating window is way, way too short. It's the wrong time of day. So it's one tool. It's a very useful tool, as is a short 24-hour fast. So great, great tools, but it has to be done correctly for you to get results, for this piece of the puzzle to actually boost your metabolism and not do the opposite. So like most great tools, there's a wonderful tool, right? But you've got to know how to use it. And you've got to know also how to use it for you, for your particular physiology, for your age, for your lifestyle, for your health issues. So these tools that I'm going to go over today are great, but it's actually how you use the tools that's really, really important. Number 2, nutrition, food. Now, I'm a nutritionist, so the nutrition piece is always the first for me, because it's always, and you'll hear me say this a lot, but it is the heavy lifting. The nutrition is absolutely the heavy lifting, but it's not the only thing as far as your metabolism is concerned and your belly fat is concerned. It is one tool, but it's actually obviously it's a broad tool, because nutrition has so many different, it can be complex. Very complex. But I will say, to keep it really simple for the purposes of today, of this little live today, is that studies have shown, and you really do want to look at well-designed studies, and the most important evidence-based studies, which are randomized crossover trials generally, but the ones that we really want to look at that show us, that give us the evidence, that certainly give me the data as a researcher that I need, have to be long-term. And it has to be long-term for particularly for metabolism and weight loss and weight maintenance, because I think where a lot of these approaches really slightly fall short, and if not even hoodwink you, and a lot of the sort of keto low carb approaches is like, you can lose this weight really, really quickly, the number on the scale. And actually, in some cases, you can, if you're cutting out absolutely everything, all the usual processed foods and sugars and blah, blah, blah. And then you're, just eating a ton of saturated fat, which, by the way, puts you at higher risk for heart disease. And then what you will generally see on this kind of approach is water weight will go down, and then that will be reflected on the number on the scale, not on your body composition at all, but on the number on the scale. And over time, even worse, it can lead to losing lean muscle mass. And this is scary because, as I've just said, in order to boost your metabolism, you need to increase lean muscle mass. So what you really need to do is take off your short-term goggles and put on your long-term goggles and look at the studies that really are efficacious over time. And when I say over time, I'm not talking 1 year, I'm talking 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Those are the kind of studies that we really need to look at. So there's very few studies for weight maintenance that have been done as far as food and weight maintenance. And one of the few is those who adopted a low-fat, whole food, plant-based way of eating was the most efficacious in terms of fat loss, belly fat loss, so waist circumference, and maintenance over a very long period of time. That's it. End of story. That's the only way the only study that I found that's really, really long term. Now, what's really interesting about a low fat, and again, it's really nuanced when I say low fat, because it's not maybe what you think it means, low fat. So I'm just using this as a very broad term. And also whole food plant-based has a lot of nuances in it, because there's lots of different definitions of that. But so I'm using this very generally, certainly as far as this study was concerned. What it actually does, and this is the most interesting thing for me, this is a sub-study or an adjunct study, is that eating these foods, so a whole food, plant-based way of eating, which is, how I eat, and I'm in better shape now than I was when I was in my 30s. My body is in better shape. It actually boosts metabolism after every meal. So that's so interesting. It actually has been shown to boost postprandial burn. That would be boost your metabolism after the meal. So that's pretty significant, and that's pretty exciting with this way of eating. So that's the nutrition piece. That's very, very broad, but obviously when you get into it, the nuances are much, much more nuanced. Now let's go to number 3, exercise. So exercise is really closely related to your metabolism. And so it's not just, again, one thing. Yes, the nutrition is the heavy lifting. Yes, the nutrition is really, really, really important. I'd go as far as to say, if you're going to tackle one thing first, tackle the nutrition and have that be about 70% of your drive to really get that piece 100% dialed in, because that's really going to move the needle for you. But exercise is very important, specifically for very specific exercises for reducing belly fat. And you need to change the way you exercise to reduce belly fat, particularly after the age of 50, but also to boost your metabolism. And so this is very, very important. And there are so many different kinds of exercise. So now we're finding more and more that it's not so much hours of hardcore HIIT workouts or cardio, hours of kind of high impact cardio. Actually, we're finding that the opposite is true, that more moderate cardio, resistance bands can be great, but that's something that's a little bit different. But I'm talking right now about movement throughout the day. Our bodies are designed to move, and designed to move all through the day. Your body wasn't designed to sit at a desk like I'm sitting right now, and probably you're sitting. We are designed to move. So you want to think of something called NEAT. Write it down, NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So that's a fancy way for saying there's a lot of things that you can do to keep your body moving. Thermogenesis is to keep your body burning fat, and that absolutely has to happen. So it's almost not just these bursts of exercise, going to the gym once or twice a week, or using resistance bands, or using weights. All those things are great, and keep on doing it, because you have to, we talked about this on my last live, you absolutely do have to lift heavy, and you have to build lean muscle mass to turn your body into a fat burning machine. So you need to have both, absolutely have both. And that's why I'm just being so honest with you ladies, because just sitting around going, oh, well, I'm just going to try doing intermittent fasting or taking this supplement or this one thing, and then you're so disappointed and frustrated because it didn't give you the result you want. It's not going to. It's not. because you need a holistic wellness toolkit, if you like, to put all the pieces into place together. So exercise is very important, the right kind of cardio, absolutely heavy lifting, whether it's with resistance bands or weights, and also this NEAT exercise. And this is really what I teach my clients to do every day. We do as a thing that we call functional fitness. And there's a certain amount of exercises that we do, you know, every single day, and you do it throughout your day as you're moving through your day and your life. And that's what we do. And it's this complete, my clients learn to be very consistent. You know, it's not just these bursts of effort or exercise followed by periods of I've lost my motivation or I'm falling off the wagon. We do completely the opposite. We dial in these little tiny beautiful lifestyle changes that mount up day after day, week after week, month after month. And that's what, you know, we're all about. That's what my program is about. And and actually what I am going to do before I forget, because I always forget this, is I'm just actually going to pop this in the chat right now, which is a link. Hang on a second. Did that go there? Yes, it did. I think it did. Yeah. There's a link that I've popped in right now. And that link is for those of you who want help with any of this. You're really stuck and you're like, wait a minute, you're talking way too fast. And this is like doing my head in, as they say in England. You can always book a breakthrough session with me. And I've put the link in here. It's also in the description to this. But this is for those of you who are really ready, that you know that you need help. You know that you need to make some significant changes. You know that you can't do it on your own, and you really are serious about making a big change in your life right now. You're sick and tired of being sick and tired. You've had enough. You've tried to do all this on your own. You can't, and you know that, you know, the time is to get some help. So anyway, let's go to number 4. So alcohol, limit alcohol, because alcohol, I would say, honestly, just eliminate, not even minimize, but eliminate alcohol. It has a direct effect on everything, basically. Obviously on your liver function, and metabolism. And it's really, really important. It's not talked about enough. And so women after the age of 50, you're obviously at higher risk for heart disease and breast cancer. And the science is very interesting. Just this is just like, oh, I'm taking a little tiny departure here from our topic of metabolism, but just 2 units of alcohol a day, which could be 2 small glasses of wine or something like that, just a few days a week can, but certainly if you had that, you know, almost every day, you have a couple of glasses of wine, that can increase your risk of breast cancer by 40%. Honestly, that no amount of alcohol is going to be positive or a good thing for you. Certainly if you're over the age of 50. It's just gotta, sorry, but it's the truth. And so that's another thing that my lovely clients, they're like, okay, you know, we're going to be all in with this, and you'll notice such an incredible difference. Even if you just have, you know, cocktails or wine, you know, a couple of nights a week and everything, you're going to make a big difference. But it's very important. And I had to mention that as one of these tips. Okay. Tip number 5 is sleep. So sleep is very, very, very important. And it's very important for your metabolism. It's very, very important when it comes to releasing belly fat. And when I say sleep, really, I'm talking not just about the hours that you're asleep. I'm talking about your whole wake-sleep cycles during the day, your circadian rhythms that start from the moment you wake up, of how you can increase cortisol when you wake up, which is what you want to do. That's when you want your energy. You set your melatonin clock when you wake up first thing in the morning. So it's how to really get that going, getting lots of light in your eyes, and then really taking that down at night. So sleep happens way before you go to sleep. So just, if there's one takeaway with this little tip, sleep happens, your rest happens way before you get into bed. And you really want to start looking at your evening routine and adjusting that. Because if you're all ramped up in the evening, doing emails, stressed out, dealing with this, that, and the other, your cortisol level is up here. If you've got bright light in your eyes, your melatonin hasn't not even been released yet. So no wonder you have trouble sleeping. And women in menopause have interrupted sleep anyway. So now you're making it even worse. And if you're not getting a good, really deep, restful night's sleep, that's going to affect your metabolism. It's going to affect your ability to lose belly fat. I cannot stress the importance of this. So that cycle has to be really regulated, and to do that, you have to train yourself. You train your morning routine to be different. You train your evening routine to be different, and it can be trained. You can train yourself. That's the really good news. A lot of people think, well, I can't. I mean, I work, or I'm a night owl, or I can't. Well, that might be what you believe right now. That might be what we call your fixed identity. And I work a lot on beliefs with women, but you can change that, and you can start training that. And it starts with changing, your beliefs, what you say to yourself, and what you choose to be and do. So that's a big topic there. Okay, number 6, cold exposure. So cold exposure, there is quite a lot of interesting data and science now, and this goes into the topic of brown fat and white fat. So those who have more brown fat, and brown fat is interesting because brown fat is basically characterized by, it looks brown because that fat has more mitochondria in it, which show up as being brown. And mitochondria are obviously the little powerhouses that burn fat. They're your energy powerhouses that burn fat for energy. So the more of those you have, the better. So the more brown fat you have, the better. And lots of studies. Again, it's a massive area of research, and it's a massive topic, which I'm not even going to start to get into now. But suffice to say that research now shows that you can actually increase your brown fat by exposure to cold. And so what would that look like? Well, that could be jumping into a cold bath, could be having a cold shower. There's a lot of these contrast therapy now where you can find places where you can do a ice plunge thingamajiggy. I did one actually last weekend with my husband. And so you can do that, but you can make it much more simple. You can just turn the shower on to cold for about 30 seconds for the last, did I say 30 seconds? That's a long time, right? You're in a hot shower and then you turn it down to its coldest settings. And just think for a moment, we're going 1, 2, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You've got to go. I say 1 sunshine because my dog's called Sunshine. I go 1 sunshine, 2 sunshine, 3 sunshine, 4 sunshine. That's a long time with all these little cold things coming down at you. But you could start with 10 seconds and then work up to 30 seconds. So that can be really useful. And also it can also help. It can help to increase brown fat, thereby increasing your metabolism. But also the really cool thing is that it can also prompt cortisol release as well. So that's another thing that I have my clients do in the morning, is to get some kind of cold exposure in the morning. And there's fascinating studies about people who really live in much colder places or expose themselves to cold, like instead of cranking the heating on when it's cold outside, they just don't. They just expose themselves to cold. Cold exposure at night can be very, very important, not just for sleep, but also for metabolism, like turning the thermostat right down. So it's interesting that as we live, you can see how everything converges in our modern day lifestyle, right? Heating all the time. We live in artificial heating, artificial light. We are surrounded by crappy, junky food that is so full of salt, oil, sugar, and fat. And we don't exercise as much. And all of our lifestyle changes, our lifestyle, and then stress on top of that leads to no wonder you're suffering. But there's hope. Everything can be reversed. everything. And the women that I work with just do. Yes, functional fitness. One of my clients is on. Yes, I love my functional exercises. We have 15 functional exercises in my program. And I love mine. I love them. I've done some this morning and I'm going to do it later on today. And I just do it as I go around my house. And then the last tip, but we've also covered, there's quite a lot today and we're almost out of time here, is a cortisol. So cortisol, and I speak a lot about cortisol, but cortisol is the stress hormone. Cortisol, cortisol is so directly connected to weight gain, midsection and belly fat and inflammation. It just is. So stress relief. First off, regulating your cortisol levels during the day is the first place I would start with that and learn how to do that. And then the second piece is to really look at your stress in your life right now. Look at your stress. Because as women over the age of 50, most of us have much more stress than we've ever had because we're dealing with family. We're dealing maybe with elderly parents. We're dealing with losing loved ones. We're dealing with work. On top of that, work. There's never been a time in history where, as women in this age group, we don't have, we have as much stress as we have now in our life. This not intrinsic stress, but this outer stress. It's chronic stress, not healthy stress, because there's a lot of really healthy stress to be had that we get through getting through struggles and challenge. But I'm talking about this persistent underlying chronic stress. And so that absolutely has to be dealt with. And there's many, many different ways and techniques and mindfulness and meditation. And it's very much, as far as I'm concerned, it is 100% a mindset game of learning almost how to alchemize that stress that's around you and turn it into a very positive stress that's really going to help you and fuel you rather than just decimate you and chip away at you every single day. So that's it. We're out of time. Thank you for being here today. I hope you found this useful. And if nothing else, the takeaways that I want you to remember are the myths of all those kind of quick fixes. Just don't bother with any of that. It really doesn't work. 2, you need the heavy lifting. You've got to do the work. And the work is multifactorial. It's not just one thing. 3 takeaway is that you can boost your metabolism. You can, I've seen it time and time again with the women that I work with, you can boost it after menopause. And you can release belly fat as well. It is absolutely not impossible. Don't let anybody tell you that it is. And finally, as I've said, if you want to book a breakthrough session with me, some of my lovely clients are on today, where we can get into it, see if I can help you, see what's going on with you. You can just click the link. I'll put it in one more time and do that. And to minimize stress, the final piece here is, ladies, and some of you gentlemen, I know I've got some men watching as well, but turn off the news. Turn off the news. Turn off the doom scrolling on your phone. Just turn it off. Just be aware of whatever is around you in your environment it's so subtle. It's so subtle right now in our environment with so much going on in the world that's stressful and doom and gloom and bad news. And it's piped into us morning, noon, and night. If it's not on TV, it's through your phone or through your friends or through your community. I want you to be really, really aware of this, because everything that's going on, it comes and it goes. It comes and it goes. And media and our community amplifies it to a scream level. But you don't have to listen to that. You don't have to. Turn it down. Turn off the scream. Get into yourself. Do some breath work. Get still. Get quiet. Take care of your mindset. Because if you don't take control of that and you don't take care of your mindset and your stress management, no one else is going to do that for you. So that really is the most important piece of this entire discussion. All right, I'll see you next time.